There we go.
This meeting is being recorded.
Phew.
Okay, for those looking at the recording, I apologize. We only just started recording. We've been meeting for the last 10 or 15 minutes. I'm Benji Fisher, one of the maintainers of the Migrate API. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
No.
No. So also on caller Mike Butts and Vicky Spagnola, or Quiet One, and I'm not on video is Mauricio Dinarte or Dinarcon. While I'm on the subject, let me open up the chat window. And Mauricio, I will keep an eye on that. And if you're having trouble with audio, I'll read any comments you have into the recording. And so just for the record, we've looked at the issues marked critical. There is only migrate role permissions that exist on the destination, and that needs review, and either Mike or I should be in a position to review that. I think Vicky's been updating the patches. There are 3 that are marked, that are tagged migrate critical. One is deprecate migration set, and Vicky asked as a favor that Mike and or I review that so we can actually get it done, because it's been lingering far too long and we would like to get it done. 2 others here, one of which is postponed, and that's postponed on something that is sort of in Mike's hands. And this last one, move source module and destination module from migrate to migrate Drupal. Does anyone have insight on that one?
Well, Dan Flanagan 8 just wrote a patch for it, which I gave a very cursory look at. And it looks quite nice, actually.
Okay.
But it needs someone else to look at. It's not for me. I don't have all the structure
So
background
that
to know if it's the
issue,
best approach.
so yeah, so that issue, that's not huge. This one's migrate critical because at some point, probably at the end of Drupal 10, we're going to want to pull most of migrate Drupal out and put it into contrib. And so this is a piece of migrate Drupal that is in core migrate that needs to come out. So that's what makes this one critical. It's not necessarily, I don't believe, critical to get into 9.4, but it's critical to get done so that we usually move those out. The other one that we were looking at too, by the way, just to document it, the one about migrating only role permissions, the one that's marked actual critical, that one is critical because things will break when Drupal 10 comes out if we don't get that in, because Drupal 10 is going to enforce that we don't have permissions that don't exist. So so that makes that one critical to get in before 10.
Yes.
But based on that summary, we have 2 to get done for 9.4, the permissions one and the deprecation of set, because you want to maintain my sanity for set.
Yeah, those will be the important ones to get in 9.4.
What else? There is one other issue. Unfortunately, since Lucas isn't here, we can't get his feedback, but the ongoing problem of making sure that the migrate tools module is compatible with future versions of Drush. I know that Lucas and Moshe Weitzman had a conversation and agreed on a roadmap. There are a couple of things about that roadmap that I'm not entirely clear on, but I guess Lucas is the only one who could clarify that. But there has been, excuse me, another development just in the last week or so. And that is that this pull request that I opened some time ago, when did I open it? In September. This is a pull request for Drush core. And I guess for the sake of the recording, I'll say it's pull request 4826 on github.com/drushops/drush. It was, after some discussion, it was closed by Moshe and then reopened. And then just a little over a week ago, Claudio Christe did a review of it and asked for some changes that look pretty modest. So as soon as I have a little bit of time, I should be able to reply to that. And I'd also like to give a little shout out to Moshe because he did ping me in Slack, specifically drawing my attention to this. I had sort of lost track of this pull request. So I guess there are sort of two tracks that we're going on to try to make them compatible. And this pull request for Drush core is to make it easier for custom commands, such as those in Migrate Tools, to modify the migration commands that are in Drush core. And I think that if that gets accepted, a little bit of work in Migrate Tools, and we can have them be compatible again. The other track that we're pursuing, or that really Lucas is pursuing, is that the main thing that we want to add back to the Drush migration commands is the ability to filter by migration group. And that, of course, migration groups are not in Drupal core, they're introduced by the Migrate Plus module. And since they're not in Drupal core, they're not supported in Drush core, but it should be able to add them back in Migrate Plus or Migrate Tools, which is what we're trying to do. But the other approach is that Lucas is looking at alternative ways to do filtering. I think it's using some sort of pre-processing on the YAML files, which maybe I shouldn't say too much about because I'll probably get it wrong. But it is promising that we've actually got a code review with requested changes that look doable.
Good. That is good to hear.
And in the meantime, they've also released a new major version. So we're now targeting Drush 11. But I feel sort of like Alice trying to keep up with the White Queen, and running as fast as she can, she's still falling behind.
In fact, that's next on my reading list. I'm going to reread it soon.
I named my daughter Alice. That's how much I like the book.
Oh, wow.
And Mauricio asks in chat, does this have implications on Migrate Upgrade? I believe it does. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Migrate Upgrade has a dependency on Migrate Tools. Maybe not, maybe it only has a dependency on Migrate Plus, but I think it has a dependency on Migrate Tools. So if you have an incompatibility between Migrate Tools and Drush, you also have an incompatibility between Migrate Upgrade and Drush. I think you can still get them both to work with an old version of Drush, like 10.3. But who knows when that's going to break. So I would say, yes, it does have implications on Migrate Upgrade. migrate upgrade also, it adds a default migration group to every migration it creates. Isn't that correct? If we totally get rid of migration groups, then, which is sort of the direction that Mosh and Lucas are going in, then we'll have to make changes to migrate upgrade. And I guess Moshe's point all along has been, well, we can already filter based on migration tags. Why do we need two different ways to filter things? Which is a pretty good point. And because it's the way we've always done it is not a great answer. Saying we want it for backwards compatibility is maybe slightly better, but maybe basically comes down to the same thing. So yeah, and Mauricio replies in the chat that he's been pinning to Drush 10.3.
Oh.
So have we run out of agenda items to discuss? We've gone through the criticals.
I would like to make a mention of our postponed maintainer needs more info issues. We have 30 of them, and anything over 3 months of since last update is fair game for a bit more of a sort of close. Like, you know, if you don't give us information, we can't do anything about this. Some have been open for over a year, so. Not that I'm suggesting you review anything other than the criticals, but if your brain wants to, those would be ones to see if they're still relevant. And for all we know, they're hangovers from 8 or something.
Yeah, there's also like 33 that are marked as major that probably would do us good to just check in them all and make sure they actually are major and not just major to the person that posted. I'm not saying do it here, but like we should throw that on our list of things to check into, because 33 of them and all but 10 haven't been touched in 3 months either. So some of them are 4 years old. They can't be that major.
Yeah, I was thinking of the same thing, of doing something. Actually, I do have a question for probably you mostly, Mike, since you're what was the word you used recently about your
I don't know, you're scaring me. I try not to use words.
You're very clear on what should be in core and what should not be in core.
Well, I pretend to be. I figure if I say it with authority, it usually works.
There's an issue that I'm seeking at the moment. Yes, that's adding derivers. Let's see if I will put it in the migration Slack chat.
Can you throw it in the Zoom chat?
I can. Once I find it, chat. Bingo.
I can do it. Oh, you beat me. So for the sake of the recording, it's issue 3051251. Existing menu links show validation issues on migration, and all menu links pointing to node translations are invalid.
And there's a related issue I'm going to find a comment for.
One of these related issues?
Probably derived path alias migrations, issue 312264.
It's a comment from Wim about what's needed. And I looked at it too late last night. But adding a deriver is not what we want to do. And yet here we are again facing adding a deriver. Oh, here's the comment. I'll post the link to the comment in chat. It's a comment on the other issue. And honestly, like I said, I looked at it last night and I didn't get a chance to think about it. All I thought was, oh, this needs Mike to look at it. That's what I thought, to be perfectly honest.
Some 325. Oh, gosh.
So,
Well, that's not the. Well, wait, menu link migration should run after terms are migrated.
Well, if we're bringing up pet issues, there's one. It's 3007709. It's not core, it's in the Migrate Plus module. So the issue title says add XPath style filtering ability in JSON data parser plugin. But in my opinion, the issue title should be that our JSON parsing really sucks. And the solution is not to reinvent the wheel, but to import some library that knows how to parse JSON. And there are a couple of candidates for which library to use. And I'm not entirely sure that we've chosen the absolute best one, but it's probably good enough. I did a reroll. So one of the most recent patches is from me. So it really needs someone else to review it. It would be nice maybe if we had some tests added to it, but I just think it would be a good addition if we had some decent JSON parsing in the Migrate Plus module.
Yeah, how does this relate to putting the JSON source plugin in core?
So what we've talked about for core is JSON API, which is a specific interface, or what's the word? It's a specific standard that it doesn't just say, okay, we're going to import JSON. We're going to import JSON with certain metadata and certain discoverability abilities. It's like what the JSON module already in Drupal core produces. We want a way to ingest that. And a big part of that, I think, is that since the JSON API specifies how you handle pagination, the person writing the migration should not have to worry about getting the next page of results. That should be handled by the source plugin.
Okay.
I've kind of been thinking lately that maybe that's something that we should be developing in Contrib first. Just because then we won't have to worry about the difficulties of getting new PHP packages added to the list of requirements for Drupal core.
That's a good point.
But I haven't done anything about it. I've just been thinking about it.
That's a reasonable way to go. Do that in Migrate Plus or separate module?
I think a separate module. I kind of think of it as an all-in-one migration source plugin. And if we were going to add it to Migrate Plus, that has its own structure of fetching and parsing. So it sort of breaks the source plugin into those two separate pieces.
Okay.
And I think I'd like to do it as one piece. I mean, maybe once it's actually done, we'll look at it and say, hey, it would be better structured. It would be, more decoupled if we broke it up into fetching and parsing and follow the Migrate Plus model. But on the other hand, maybe we'll look at it and say, yes, this really has to be one integrated source plugin. We won't know until we actually find time to do it.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'd like to go back to the various issues about the migration lookup plugin. If we plan on rewriting it and have a nice new shiny one, what happens to all the issues about the current one? Do we want to put them on hold and emphasize making a new one?
I need some more background on this. Is there a particular issue I should look at?
There's lots of issues. There's all kinds of issues about its return values, about trying to skip after a migration lookup.
And the bulk of them kind of live in my head, but which is never any good. But I mean, I started the process by creating the services for lookups and stubs last year or a year ago, 2 years ago, whenever I did that, which just kind of offloaded a lot of the processing and interaction with the row and the lookup tables. And so we kind of, I rewrote the migration lookup plugin to use those, and then going through and running tests and figuring all the stuff out. Like I have to catch a lot of exceptions in there that we shouldn't be catching, that we should let error out. But I had to catch them because the old one somewhere managed to catch them. And so if I stopped catching them suddenly, it would cause code that worked to not work anymore. So like, that's one thing I would like to have this new plugin not try to catch all of these exceptions and just let it error, let it pass them through. And when plugins aren't found, when whatever various things happen, the return values of it is pretty inconsistent depending on whether you have a single destination key, or you have a single item, or you have a set of items, or you have multiple keys. Like, it's just weird, but that behavior is kind of baked in, and changing it in the existing plugin would require a couple of Drupal cycles to add a new configuration option to get the new value and deprecate not setting it, and then say we're going to change the default value to turn that stuff on. And the next one, it would be a lot easier to write a new one that has a consistent return value and just deprecate the old one completely. And then we could do backwards incompatible return value changes on it without having to worry. Joaquin suggested making no stub be the default instead of stubbing being the default, which I hadn't thought about before, but I kind of agree with him. I definitely use no stub a lot more often than I actually want it to do stubs. Plus stubbing, inadvertently stubbing causes issues, and so I'd kind of like you to have to explicitly say that you want that to happen, because it creates rows that don't validate correctly if you don't have proper follow-ups and all of that. So because more validation issues and garbage database stuff can happen by stubbing, like I would like people to explicitly say, yes, I want to create these rows. I promise I'll take care of them later. What else was there? Those are the biggest ones.
So
I feel like there was one more thing, but I can't think of what it was.
And just for the sake of the recording, the issue we're looking at now is 3246666.
Well, I
The
remember the
migrate
other
lookup.
thing. The other thing was that in those stub services, I kind of violated one of the interfaces I created to put an optional fourth parameter in one of the methods that gets called because migrate lookup, when it returns these destination values in the array, it doesn't key them by their RC. I don't remember exactly. It has to do with keying the destination keys by their actual machine name versus their index in the lookup table. And
I
for some
remember
reason,
that.
yeah, and for some reason I had to add another parameter in there just because of where we could get access to what those were. I don't remember if I'm trying to get, I assume I'm trying to make sure that it always comes back keyed, but anyway, it has something to do around that I can't get rid of because the current lookup plugin doesn't always put them by index, or doesn't always do one or the other, and the only way I can, by the time the data comes back from the new services, we've lost some of the information, so I have to pass a parameter up to the service to get that keyed correctly to preserve backwards compatibility. It's nothing that needs to happen. Like if you declared the keys were going to be this way or that way, you can go set your migrations to use them correctly. But yeah, anyway, so that's the other one. It would let us deprecate that fourth parameter in the service and reset it back to what the interface is actually expecting. So those are the four big issues I have with migrate lookup. It's writing the new plugin is really not hard. I could sit down and do that in an afternoon. That does it what I want to do. It's actually just there's a whole lot of code in the current one that manipulates things to put them in weird ways for backwards compatibility, because of all the, every time we make a change and clean something up, we then have to have this crop code for backwards compatibility. Writing the new one would actually be very simple. It's then going back and updating all of the core migrations and fixing all the tests and all of that to use the new one, because it will change kind of the output in some of the cases. So.
still having migration lookup being robust or migration lookup version 2, having that robust is really worth the effort.
It would be robust, and it would be much more consistent. But like the migration lookup originally was really like kind of built around the simple use case of one source ID, one destination ID. I send it the source ID, I get a single value back for this destination ID. But since we've added the ability to look up against part of the source key and get multiple destination, then we've got, sometimes you get arrays, sometimes you get a single value. So I'd like it to always, send back the same array structure regardless of how many destination keys and how many results there are. But it does mean that there are cases where we're just expecting that single simple value to come back, and then we'll have to do a little more, we'll have to pipe it through a couple other array plugins to make sure it works right in the migrations. And so that's the harder part of it, is updating all the core migrations to use the new one.
So after we get our critical and our migrate critical done, that could be the push, the main focus.
Yeah, that could be a good one. Again, I don't want to remove the existing migrate lookup anytime before Drupal 11. Like I want it to stick around in deprecated, but I want it to be there throughout Drupal 10's lifetime, because it would screw up everybody if we tried to make it go away quickly. So I'm not proposing that. But
Have you said that in that issue about?
Uh,
I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't typed anything in that issue in 2 years. I'm sure when I originally wrote the issue, my hope was to get it in Drupal 9 and get the other one out by Drupal 10. But that was a couple, if we'd have done it a couple of years ago, I'd have been all for that. But it definitely needs to. It's definitely
No,
not
it's
something I
pretty
want to
simple.
try. It's definitely
Pretty
not something I want to
simplistic.
jump into.
Yeah, so the plan there needs to
Oh.
be teased out a bit. Yeah.
So, one thing we should have done early on in the meeting is no. This is the fun part is celebrate the successes we've had. So, what progress have we made in the last 3 months? I think it's human nature to focus on your own shortcomings and things that should be working better. But we should also remember to pat each other on the back for the good things. So I've apologized for not doing a lot of code review in a long time, but Mike has done a lot more in the last 3 months than he was doing 3 or 6 months ago. So our queue is in much better shape thanks to that.
Yes.
So thumbs up and a big thank you to Mike.
I know we're under 400 issues. Yay.
We got a thumbs up in chat from Mauricio. If we look at the Migrate Plus module, it had a release a week or two ago, December 24th. That's right, it was just before Christmas. And that included a whole bunch of new process plugins. Well, some of them aren't so new because they've been in the dev version for a while. But this is the first release that has these new process plugins. And Dan Flanagan and I wrote a change record. So there are 2 new plugins using the DOM processing. There's one for extracting a value from an entity. There's the gate, which is sort of a variant of skip on empty. There's the service plugin, which makes a few issues obsolete and perhaps a few existing plugins obsolete. And there's the Transpose plugin, which, well, I'm a math geek, so that name makes sense to me. I'm the one who named it that. But transpose means to swap rows and columns. And the idea is that if you have, I guess actually Dan made an example down here. If you have one source property, first names, that has Alice, Bob, Carl, and maybe it came by exploding a comma separated list or something. And you have another source property called last names. You put them into an array. The first row is Alice, Bob, Carl, and the second array is the array of last names. But what you need is an array of tuples with first name and last name together. And that's what the Transpose plugin will give you. It'll give you first name, last name, first name, last name, first name, last name, so that you can then process it. And other uses are things like link text and link URL for making a link, image source and image alt text, which maybe you're extracting from an XML file, and so you have 2 separate lists. So Transpose will take the 2 separate lists and give you a list of lists. So we have a good half dozen new process plugins in the Migrate Plus module in that release. And there's also a new release of Migrate Tools, which I haven't looked at. So I can't tell you offhand what's new there, but it was released the same day. And the release notes don't mention any particular theme, but they do list the issues. Oh, this one looks familiar. Calling Drush MMSG before migrations have run causes a pile of errors. I've certainly noticed that. It's an annoyance. It would be nice to have it fixed, although it never really broke anything. Any other successes in the last 3 months?
I was quite happy that we got all these source plugin documentation issues fixed, except for the file one.
I'm sorry, except for the
one about files. The file source plugin. I think it's probably waiting on your review, Benji. Actually,
okay.
it was your baby in a way.
Oh, the path for the files when you're migrating from Drupal 7. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, has there been anything in the UI that was done? I don't think there has. Ooh. Yeah.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Ah, that's waiting for me. Okay.
I was going to suggest in that any remaining time we could do triage on the major, but it's actually only a few minutes left. But I'd like to ask a question if I could.
Go ahead.
This is specific to an issue, and I'm posting the link in Zoom chat. Apparently, there's a schema.org and schema.org UI module in Contrib that extends the RDF module. Doesn't have any database tables, so that sense doesn't need an upgrade path. But there's the patch posted wants to put that module into the migration state file so that when you look on the review form when running an upgrade from the UI, the schema.org module shows as being upgraded. That's what we do for core modules that have that don't need an upgrade path. This is actually a case that we didn't consider when writing all the state stuff. And I would just like opinions, if we should do it or not, because it kind of opens the door to other people saying we want our module in there.
So when you get to the review page, it'd be nice to have a little screenshot in here so we could discuss it. But when you get to the review page, other than core adding it, is there any other way you could get it to indicate that yes, this will be migrated? This will be updated properly?
You could, if there was a Drupal 9 version of the module, you could just add that little file and it would be discovered. I don't know if there's any other modules out there like that, like this one. Is this a one-off? Is this opening the door to other people doing it, or we just handle it in documentation?
Um,
Because this will happen for any module on your source site that doesn't have migrations. This happens.
I think that's okay. I mean, anyone who cares enough about a particular module to create an issue, we're only adding 1 or 2 lines to a YAML file for each of these, and it will give accurate results on the upgrade review. That seems to me to be worth it.
And will this open the door for other modules to say, yeah, put mine in there too? Somewhere?
Again, if someone cares enough to open an issue and it's only adding a line or 2 of YAML, I think that's okay.
My knee-jerk reaction is to disagree, but we'll see. I'll think about it some more.
Oh wait, this lost. This is for something that migrates from contrib into something that's now in core, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Extends.
Yeah.
But schema.org. But there's no like Drupal 8/9 schema org module, right? This is just moving data from contrib into something that's in core. I mean, that's why this goes into core, is because this is from a contrib to core.
Right.
If you were from contrib to contrib, then we don't mark it finished in core. You mark it finished in whatever contrib module it migrates into. So
you're both happy with it, is what I'm hearing, and that's fine. I just needed to hear another opinion because I looked at it late last night and it was late. Okay.
I mean, from what I've heard, it makes sense to include that in core if that's the intention. I mean, I guess the other, yeah, because there's no 8 mod. So if it doesn't have any database tables, what is it actually migrating? I'm sorry, you probably just said that, but I was a little distracted. And the support for migrating those state variables is in core?
Yeah, they do write variables which migrate Drupal migration state plugins discover. So when the Drupal migration wizard gets to what will be upgraded, it incorrectly lists them as modules that will not be upgraded.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the migration then just kind of works because of the variable. So yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason not to. I'm happy to review the issue itself offline because I have ADD and it's impossible for me to multitask and actually think something through completely while we're in a meeting. But my gut says that's probably fine, unless I'm missing something.
You know what I haven't looked at? I haven't looked at what the D7 test fixture has. That's the missing piece for me. I don't think it. If the D7 test fixture doesn't have that particular module and it's migrating, then there's some magic going on, I guess. Where is?
So you're saying that adding test coverage for this would be 2 or 3 times as hard as adding support for this?
I already wrote the test coverage. I didn't post it though because I wanted to see what it was like. It comes down to me writing it because you have to fiddle with the UI tests, and I seem to be the one that does that. So I just wrote it for fun. Without thinking.
I mean, that might be a valid point. If it's just, accidentally getting migrated in bulk variable migrations versus something we actually are having a test that it's being migrated, then maybe it does make sense to write a test and add it to the fixture.
All right, the
Oh,
fixture does not have the schema.org module at all. And I don't know if anybody's done anything to the RDF module, you know, in the D7.
we are at the end of the hour, and there
Yes.
there is actually one other thing that I want to bring up, which is that I don't see minutes for the last few Slack meetings attached to the issue, and I think I know why. It seems that Slack is not accessible via Google Chrome because of the its certificate, its TLS certificate. At least when I tried to load it in Chrome, it refused to load. And that means that our Chrome plugin that we use to scrape the Slack threads won't work. Is that what the problem is, or is that a problem that only I am having?
I use Chromium. Let me see. The plugin's coming up in Chromium. So I can work on the minutes.
So the
Yeah.
plugin is there, but can you actually look at the Slack page?
I can pull it up in Chrome.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it.
Huh. That's
Is it your bedtime, Mike?
No, it's not.
Can you tell me what URL you're looking at? Because I'm still
Me?
getting this.
app.slack.com. The Digicert CSA or Digicert CLS expires April 18th, which it's not a 3-month.
I'm getting certificate invalid because it's for slack.com instead of app.slack.com. And yes, Digicert, that's what you said, isn't it?
Ow, fudge. Oh. Excuse me.
I mean, yeah, it's got the old name, slack.com, star.slack.com. The one I'm getting is valid.
Well, if you can get it to work, then we have a little backlog of meetings that need their minutes scraped and posted to the issues.
Oh, I hate that plugin. The guy that wrote it had no clue what he was doing.
Well, did you write it?
You did.
Whoever wrote it has more of a clue than I do. I would start by Googling how do you write a Chrome plugin.
That is how I
wish it
started,
was-
actually. I haven't
I
done
wish it
anything in a
were
while.
available for
Actually,
Firefox.
Gabor's been, I gave Gabor maintainership to it. He's been pushing up updates to it. I haven't touched it in years.
Well, better than nothing.
But lots of people seem to be using it because every issue around the Slack meeting seems to have that format. So people are using it.
We should just get
I
off
only hear-
Slack and use another tool there that can record our meetings in a better way, because it's painful to do this, just to get that and cut it and paste it into an issue.
I wonder if I could, well, I had this, I was playing with it for a while. I actually wrote a Slack bot, and then it just kind of, I never got around to finishing it. But the idea was it was going to be a Drupal bot that could live in Drupal Slack, and you could just tell it Drupal meeting start, and it would record everything, and Drupal meeting
that would be
stop, and
heavenly.
Drupal meeting export, and it would give
Oh,
you the HTML to plug in.
because it doesn't, all the formatting gets lost.
What's that?
So like all the formatting gets lost when you use the plugin. So if
Oh,
somebody puts
some of
in
it does. It just has to. But
their puts in a quote, that gets lost. If you use
there's
a list, that gets lost.
there's a repository for it. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Some of it does get stripped out, and there are reasons. We try to accommodate as much of it as we could.
Oh,
There's a
yeah, that's
GitHub
not.
repo for it if you want to put up issues. It's a really simple. I mean, it's just a JavaScript scraper that copies things and tries to spit it out.
Unfortunately, I have a love-hate relationship with JavaScript.
Better than
But I
me, I have a
haven't-
hate relationship with JavaScript. So.
You have hate. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have been debating over the last 6 months to give it another go.
I would love someone to pay me to spend 3 months developing a chat bot, Slack bot for Drupal. Like, I think it would be useful. There's lots of things we could do, but I have never had time to actually get one finished and then beg Michael Hess to actually install it.
Mm.
So is it time to stop the recording?
Yes. We're done.
Okay.
Yeah, it's time to go get some dinner. We'll see all of you next week.